Welcome back to the Nurse Leader Debrief with Annie Clayton-Orrison as our guest. I'm Amy Trueblood, your host of the Nurse Leader Debrief. Annie and I made a second episode out of the last part of our conversation because we switched gears quite a bit, and we started to talk about her love for financial operations, any tips that she might have related to business and financial skills for our nurse leaders who are listening, as well as some encouragement from Annie to pursue advanced certification in nursing leadership and what it's like for nursing leadership to be your specialty. So welcome back to part 2 of your debrief. Now, one other piece that I want to talk through with you, if you're willing, is you mentioned you love the financial and the operational aspect of things. And that is something that oftentimes we hear from first-line managers, at least, that either they don't feel like they fully understand or they do, but struggle with that. Like they don't feel like they can move on to other competencies until that one has been mastered. And I have feelings on that, and it is a reality, right? But what is it that you love about it? And if you were to give some advice to our listeners as to how to build their skills in financial management and nursing, what would you say?
I think it's the hardest thing to wrap your mind around in the beginning, and it kind of starts on a journey as a charge nurse. They don't really realize it, though. You know, when you're doing the assignment and you're allocating labor and picking how many nurses you're going to have and CNAs you're going to have, you are making some business decisions because, you know, that body comes down to dollars. And productivity is usually where the conversation starts, you know, in business. And I wasn't comfortable with it in the beginning, but I'll tell you what you do need to do is find a mentor who is strong in that. And I just was really intentional in seeking out that education because you're right, it's not a common topic. I happened to have a vice president of nursing at the time who was very skilled in that and also had great relationships with our financial controllers. So I pursued becoming a master of understanding my labor pools, how I would use them. Can I exchange body for body, you know, or is it role-based? You know, a lot of people have questions about that, just basics around the assignment. One thing I do for my leaders is I do the same. I'm very skilled in it now, but I'm going to set you up with an expert. That's one of the first things I do from the very beginning, and even with my charge nurses, so that you have an understanding of how you play a role in the business decision, and it's usually staffing. The other piece that nurse managers usually control is the supplies, you know, the time management skills, you know, all those things are part of business. We just don't normally think of it that way. So becoming lean, you know, I love the lean principles, and that applies to managing your supplies. It applies to managing your time. In my weekly meetings, I give out an article of the week, and I got invested into, honestly, Harvard Business Review very early on, and they have a lot of great intro topics around business. But I will also tell you, this was my weak point. I knew it was my weak point. It's everybody's weak point, right? It's not something we often talk about. We don't talk about it in nursing school. So like you, I had a decision to make in getting my master's. And I decided I live and breathe nursing leadership every day. I get good feedback. It's something I can easily find and educate myself on more so than business. So I pursued my MBA. I pursued my MBA because those were my weak points. And I have found that I love it. I don't know that I could articulate necessarily why, but I love data. I love implementing action plans and procedures and processes and improving them on data because it's a motivator for people. You know, when you can show them this is how you moved the needle, you know, it's a different response than something that's more subjective. So I just love it. I love throughput. I'm weird. And this is why I get put on all the weird committees, because I just find it fascinating and we can make it better. You know, we can improve.
I love that. I love throughput too. I mean, in staffing, because it's a puzzle, and I love puzzles. Right. And I love to be able to really figure out, okay, if we just did X, Y, or Z, you know, we might be able to get a patient in 15, 20 minutes earlier. And then you need to understand that not everybody is looking at the finances of it, and so figure out how to translate that into tangible action that staff will embody as well, and really thrive in getting behind. That's another balance, I think, in an art is finances are there, right? We all have to balance finances in our personal lives, in our professional lives. We have to make sure that we are savvy enough to at least come break even, right? In a balance there. And oftentimes people will say, well, that's not human centered. And I think, we need to be talking about the people. And if we haven't provided an environment where somebody can get out of work on time, then the overtime that results in their 15, 20 minutes staying late or coming in early is acceptable. And then we don't want to pursue it any further, right? And with the high reliability is a reluctance to simplify explanations. That's what I was trying to say earlier. I just thought it just came to me. And even in that, right? So when we've been talking so far, you've been talking about human connection in leadership and operational expertise, financial expertise, and how you've identified that competency and move forward in yourself. I think the balance is possible. I think it's both, right? And I think that's what's beautiful about nursing leadership.
Yeah, I can tell you. So, like, for example, like a finance aspect, if you have nurses or techs not taking lunch, I'm not going to start the conversation with 30 minutes unused times 12 could be a whole nother RN for you. It's, tell me why you're not taking lunch. Like, that's not a healthy thing for you. You have to be getting off this unit and taking a break and decompressing, taking care of your body so you can provide the care. Help me understand how I can help you get there. And then if we've been able to achieve that conversation and they truly do feel that support, I'm also going to tell the team, look, if we were taking these lunches as well, you maybe could have had another RN today. Think about it in terms like that, because 30 minutes, every person missing it, you're talking about a lot of FTEs, so you want to be able to have that support when you need it. I need you to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. That's exactly it. That's what it's about. Ultimately, there are financial gains, yes, but ultimately, if somebody's extending a 12-hour shift, we already have enough information that 12-hour shifts may be questionable from a safety perspective for all involved. And then you look at, and particularly those working night shifts, right? If you got up at noon and now you're going to work early and you're staying for 13, 14 hours, and now you need to get home.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as, well, you work 12 hours, 3 days a week. They don't. They're working 13, 14, 15 maybe. And even whether your days or nights, that's a lot. And we need to be able to prioritize that and have the honest conversation about, sure, there's a financial impact here. That may be what draws our attention to it, because that's what we have as tangible data that you love is, gosh, people aren't taking a lunch in this department.
And it's symptomatic of a much bigger problem.
And there's no reason to approach it from a financial perspective first.
Exactly. Same thing with even like length of stay. Like, when I start that conversation, it's, if we're able to get these patients out, you're not going to get that bolus of patients at 3 p.m. where it's just sheer chaos. Let's like target this to space it out. And I don't start with the length of stay discussion. It starts with, I want your day to be smoother. I want it to be more efficient for you and ultimately less stressful, so this is what we can do. And in the long run, in my mind, it's part of the journey of reducing length of stay.
That's so funny to me as I've lived in 9 different states, and anywhere I've ever gone, there's the story that we tell ourselves is that darn ED is waiting until the end of their shift to just send every patient that they possibly can so that our evenings are miserable, or we can't, the end of our shift is miserable. And again, I'm not saying that there's nowhere that has ever happened, but the majority of the time, if you look across across organizations, the trending graph is typically the same, at least to start, before concerted efforts on throughput are started. It's this bolus between 3 and 7 p.m. because that's a couple hours after the beds open. And that's just how it works. Somebody discharges, we need to clean the room, right? And so their beds aren't available until then. And if we would start the day with discharge and whatnot, then we might have time before those patients are ready to be admitted early afternoon. And that can happen at a more balanced level. And, the opposite's true, right? EDs always say nurses are trying not to take report and trying on the floor. And none of that's true, right? Nobody's out here to try to make other nurses' lives miserable.
Well, and I'll tell you what has been extremely successful, and I'm a huge proponent of, is shadowing. When you live in someone else's world for a little bit, it's impossible to not have some sympathy for what they have going on. ED and inpatient, we've done that where we've swapped, and now we just have a much better appreciation for the different worlds that we live in, and it's just simply different. That's all.
Yeah, and I would consider everybody, and we can talk further about that another time, but to consider a shadow of sorts being a part of every individual's orientation. We have the time for what the return on that is, and I've done that successfully in several organizations where any nurse, any managers in particular, but any nurse, any CNA, whomever it is, goes to departments that influence. I heard one time that you should know what happens to your patients before, during, and after they are with you. And so thinking about that, if you're on a med-surg unit, sending somebody to an ED would be critically important. Sending them to a procedural area to watch what happens if somebody's had a stroke. If you don't have like a neuro-specific unit, heart failure clinics or those types of things, to where it can just be 2 to 4 hours. Somebody just to see, build relationships, because trust between departments is critical also to all of this working. So.
And especially, in the hospital acute care setting, we did something with my team where we even went into radiology. And wow, now we understand why they're super upset when we haven't finished that MRI checklist, because they're using a different system than we have, and it's very manual. So it kind of inspired us to want to make their work easier. Same thing in the lab. We realized why we always get rejected. We saw the machine that the tubes were sent in, and if you don't put the label correctly, they're going to reject it. And I'm like, wow, it's basic, but when you see it and understand it, it's just like a light bulb. And then you want to partner.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so important. I think that's a great lesson and takeaway for our listeners today as well. So you mentioned that you recently pursued a certification. So you've gotten your MBA, which congratulations, that's amazing. And you also pursued a certification. Would you talk to us about that?
Sure. It was from AONL. It's the Certified Nurse Manager Leader competency. Started with that one. I would like to work on the executive one, but I really have a lot of admiration and respect for AONL. I think they're the pioneers in trying to create those leadership competencies that we haven't had. So I did study, took that exam, super proud to have my name in that database, and I would really encourage anyone to do the same. It really isn't that intimidating. It's what you do every day. But to be able to see the other list of people who have that as well, you feel like you have immediate connections. So I have challenged 2 on my team that I feel are ready. So we're really fortunate where I work. You can apply for scholarships for something like that, and they will actually pay for your test. So it is a bit of an expense. But 2 of mine are going for that this year.
Oh, that's great. And it's great to encourage it. And the challenge is wonderful. And we'll take a moment to challenge our listeners to leave here and at least go and look that up. Look up the options for certification. My certification is from the ANCC, the Nurse Executive Advanced Certification. And I think both that, there's a nurse executive, as well as like you mentioned, the Certified Nurse Manager, as well as the Executive Nurse certifications through AONL. Those are the ones that I'm most clearly aware of, and certainly worth a pursuit. So everybody listening, go and look that up if you're not certified, and challenge yourself, set a goal, because it's not a test on things that you don't know. It is a way to honor yourself and take credit, if you will, for the expertise that you do have. And you don't need to wait to be 5-10 years in these roles. It can be right away. Did you do anything to prepare?
So I did the whole course prep in about an hour. It was very intuitive, very quick, simple, easy. So I felt really good walking into the exam, felt very well prepared took it pretty quickly, and was really happy I passed. And I definitely think that most people can in the nurse manager role. And like you said, do it for yourself. I'm super proud that I did a certification for me. And I think
Yeah, I think people are afraid sometimes to admit, particularly in nursing leadership and specifically at the manager role, admit or pursue leadership as their specialty. I've always been very clear that that is my specialty. I have never been shy about that. I was only took direct care of patients for about 4 years before I entered leadership. And from there on in, that has been my specialty. I participated in the Nurse Manager Fellowship long ago, first class for AONL in 2008, and pursued certifications and study on my own, and now, of course, a PhD. And I have been so fulfilled with that. And once you take the clinical expertise pressure off of yourself, if you are wanting to be a leader, there's room for clinical leaders as well, and there's a whole bunch of roles for that too. And as a manager, director, I really feel like we need to recognize ourselves as specialists in nursing leadership, and achieving that certification is one way to let the world know that. And so I appreciate that you've done that, and congratulations to you, and hopefully on prep for the CENP.
Yes.
So as we wrap up today, I like to just leave our listeners with one word of wisdom that you might have, something you might want to reiterate, anything of encouragement, hope, inspiration, or tactical tidbit that our leaders or our listeners could take away. So what would be the one thing you would hope our listeners take away from this conversation?
Mine's a little more touchy-feely. Mine is not so clinical. I have the privilege of currently working with a nurse manager who actually has an English background first. So she has a lot of softer skills, and I absolutely love that in her. Sometimes people think, those aren't important. Those are incredibly important to connect with people. And so she's an avid, just absolutely loves Ralph Waldo Emerson. So she'll quote things from him all the time. And there's one that I think of just about every day in a scenario. And it says, even in the mud and scum of things, something always, always sings. And I think about that in terms of any kind of rough patch you're going through. There's something to be learned. There's something good that can come from it. And even when you're in a really challenging leadership scenario, my mentor, who is the one I mentioned earlier in the military, just consider it a huge learning leadership opportunity. Something will come out of it that's positive. Try not to lose that. You can grow. So that's the saying I tell myself when I'm really feeling like this is not good, even in the mud and scum of things.
I love it. I can hear just singing in my mind right now too, and I hope that our listeners are doing the same. And what I've learned from you today is to listen to others who see something in you that you may not see in yourself. Take chances. I love that you negotiated interim work on those 2 positions that you described, because I don't think a lot of leaders know that that's possible, and it's a great potential if those who are looking to fill the role are open to it. It's a wonderful way to kind of see on both sides how that works. I've learned that through human connection and through a consistent look at our leaders, who they are as people, you can really achieve the outcomes that you desire. And also that it's okay to have both loves. And nursing leadership is a beautiful mixture of science and art from a leadership angle. The science would include finances and operations and things such as that. And the art includes just how we work with people in order to achieve what we wish, and how that is going to be key to your journey of high reliability and your journey as a professional as well. And then we have the challenge to our leaders to pursue a certification, at least find out what it looks like if this is something that's interesting to you, and always listen for the singing. Oh, Annie, it's been a delight. I'm certain I will stay in touch and we'll have you back on. I've really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit more through here, and I look forward to being a part of your journey moving forward as well. So thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Nurse Leader Debrief. And thanks to Annie Clayton-Orrison for joining us for an hour long that we could make 2 episodes from her experiences, her wisdom, and just her passion for various areas of nursing leadership. Today, I hope that you learned that there are resources available. There are people who are highly skilled in finance and business for nursing leaders, and you should reach out to them if you need any help or need any resources to hone in on those skills. We also acknowledge there are a few organizations that offer certification should you want to pursue that, and we challenged you to go and look into certification as a nurse leader and challenge yourself to a goal and challenge your team around you as well, to take that opportunity to highlight what you do already know, what you are already expert in, and that is nursing leadership. Until next time, listeners, know that you are appreciated. We love our listenership, and we love each and every one of you contributing your thoughts and comments. Please feel free to do that. And until next time, you know where to find us if and when you need a debrief.